Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to play the BMP-1 in War Thunder. Now everyone has his own playstyle, that's for sure. But what I'm going to do is give you a sort of a roadmap or an idea on how you should play this vehicle. The things I'm going to tell you and the tips I'm going to give you aren't from me and I didn't come up with them. I found these on War Thunder Wiki, so almost everything you're about to learn comes from Gaijin themselves. If you want, you can read through the whole article about the BMP-1 yourself, or you can just watch this video and let me present it to you on a server plate and learn. Make sure you pay attention because this is going to greatly impact the way you play the BMP-1, and it's going to get you a lot of kills. Now, let's get started. Now, usually I would first tell you about the history of the BMP-1, but since I made a video about that already, I'm not going to do it. If you want to watch it though, on the top right, you'll find the link to it. So, how do you play this vehicle? Well, the first and most important rule when you're operating a BMP is a visible BMP is a dead BMP. So you need to make sure that you are not visible to your enemies. Usually what you want to do is to play guerrilla tactics in which you find an enemy, come out of your hidden position, destroy the enemy tank, and then get back into the bushes or so. Keep in mind that once you shoot, the enemy's teammates might gain your attention and find your position. So changing your position after a shot is important. Another way to remain unseen in the BMP-1 is by doing big flanking maneuvers. For me personally, this has worked best. I just go around the map behind enemy lines and use the mouse-guided ATGM to destroy enemy vehicles by penetrating their sides. But now the question comes up, why should you always stay hidden and unseen in the BMP-1? Well, that's because of the very thin frontal armor and the almost non-existent side armor. The sides have very little armor, the left side has less armor than the right side, so if you're ever going to show your sides, make sure it's the right one. The thin side armor makes it very vulnerable from many different angles and caliber rounds. Usually, 12.7mm rounds are enough to penetrate and destroy the BMP-1. The flatter the angle of attack, the faster will the BMP give in and explode. The front is also weak enough to be penetrated by heavy machine guns, but since it's very angled, it will probably bounce off. But if the enemy hits your frontal weak spots, you might not survive. Besides the armor, the internal modules such as the engine compartment contribute to the BMP's survivability because it can block a lot of shots and sometimes even ATGMs. Luckily as well, since the BMP-1 is very low profile and has a very short turret, it's a lot harder to hit, although, if it's hit, the shot will destroy you. In battle, you should always use hills and other things as cover to only expose as much of the BMP as necessary. You should make it difficult for your enemies to attack you. When you position yourself, try to only show the right side of your vehicle. The BMP-1's mobility is pretty good, but still a bit worse compared to other IFVs. Despite that, once you get the BMP moving, it can travel at a very good speed. I experienced up to 64 km an hour. If you're using the BMP to be the first one at the capture zone or you just want to flank, keep in mind that you're not the only fast light vehicle. There are others as well who you might encounter before reaching your desired position. Now let's get on to how to use the armament of the BMP-1. The BMP-1 has two main weapons, the main 73mm 2A28 cannon and an ATGM. There are two ATGMs for you to choose from. If you haven't researched the BMP a lot and you still have the basic ATGM, then you have the 9M14 ATGM. There's also another ATGM which comes with the BMP-1P upgrade, which would be the 9M113 Concourse ATGM. You can research this modification for the tank as you like. I would highly advise you to focus your research on the Concourse ATGM because it's much more controllable and more effective at all ranges. Unlike the 9M14, which is controlled by using WASD on your keyboard, the Concourse is mouse controlled, which is just a lot easier to aim. Even though the 73mm is the main cannon on the BMP-1, you shouldn't use it like that. The BMP's heat route only travels at 665 meters per second and the HE travels at 290 meters per second, which means you're gonna have a lot of bullet drop. So when firing, you should also make sure you're positioned well against your target because at a 60-degree angle, the armor penetration drops to just 150mm. Although that's not a problem at long ranges, it can become a big problem for you when you're facing heavy tanks head-on and you happen to run out of ATGMs. Despite this, the heat round proves to be very valuable in emergency situations because well-placed shots can disable or destroy most vehicles the BMP will face at its BR. Also, since it has no stabilization, it's almost impossible to hit the target when braking or going cross-country at full speed. As I said before, the very thin armor on the BMP-1 makes it very vulnerable to heavy machine guns, and since most of the BMP's enemies have these other tanks, it will be very hard to directly fight them. This also means you need to be extremely careful of your surroundings and have good situational awareness. But here's the good thing, the BMP's mobility compensates for its thin armor and therefore makes it a quite decent scout and ambush vehicle. Keeping this in mind, let's talk about how you can actively use the BMP-1 in actual ground RB battles. One way to use the BMP-1 is to use it as a scout vehicle. Its fast speed and good mobility will allow you to quickly get to places where enemies will not expect you to be. From there on, make sure you're in a well-hidden position where you're hard to spot, avoid direct enemy contact, and then just mark targets from there. This strategy will get you a bunch of assists as your teammates will finish the job. Keep in mind that you should always have an exit strategy, so that when your enemies see you, you can disappear as quickly as possible. Something funny you can try would be to use the BMP's amphibious skills to scout targets from the water. The other way to use the BMP-1 is to ambush enemy targets with it. I advise you not to use your 73mm cannon for that either. Even though it can penetrate most tanks you'll encounter, the bullet drop makes it hard to actually hit them. Now, if you want to flank the enemies, you should try to find a place against common enemy paths. Try to position yourself around objectives so that while your teammates are frontally engaging the enemies, you can get them from the side. As a rule of thumb, I suggest you engage targets that are less than 500 meters away with your cannon first and use the ATGM as a finisher shot if needed. If the target is further away, I suggest you use the ATGM from the beginning. In case you're on a map or in a situation where flanking is not ideal or possible, then you can use the shoot and scoot tactics in which you stand behind cover and only expose yourself once you find a viable target to destroy. Don't forget that the BMP-1 is a Soviet tank and therefore has horrible gun depression of 4 to 5 degrees. Once the target is destroyed, seek cover ASAP. Now that was pretty much all I had to say for this video. I hope you learned a few new tactics and I wish you much success with them in your next battles with the BMP-1. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.